So in this video, we will be going over the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 2. So if you remember, we just did issue 1. It was a very more mature take on the Turtles, and that continues on with issue 2. We are introduced to the Mousers for the first time. That is a very cool cover. I like how the turtles are reflected in the metal of the Mousers. So we start with Raphael in the middle of an attack leap, and he's just having some friendly spar with Michelangelo. You got Leonardo over there grumbling because they're interrupting Splinter's TV watching. You got Donatello just working on some computer parts. You have a news program come on, and you see we are introduced to Baxter Stockman, who says he's found the solution to the city's rat problem with these mousers. Him and his colleague April O'Neil is working for him. They have created these mousers that can hunt down rats, and they can store like 5 or 6 rats apiece, and then they take them to an emptying container, emptying chamber, or whatever. And of course, they can be reused. But you can see it's a little brutal. Like you couldn't have this on a Saturday morning cartoon. They're literally killing the rats. And basically the turtles get a little uneasy. Well, Splinter does in particular, gets a little uneasy about this. Raphael, Michelangelo are still tumbling around with each other, tearing everything up. And we go to April, who is reading a paper, and there's a report about a rash of break-ins that have started about the same time the city was letting Baxter Stockman start using his mousers. And April kind of confronts Baxter about it, and Baxter kind of writes it off. He's like, me and you's the only two who can access the mousers, and if anybody else was using them, we would know about it. So he's like, come with me, there's something I want to show you. They go way down below the basement where April has never been before, and we see that Baxter Stockman has like an army of mousers down here, which surprises April because she said they were only allowed to make like 2 dozen of them. They were only paid to do like 2 dozen of them from the city. And Baxter Stockman's like, yeah, there's 200 of them in here. He's like, basically tells her he was the one using the mousers to tunnel into the banks from underground to take the money. And that's where all these mousers are coming from. He tells her he's got a big plan to have the mousers go underneath major landmarks and to unsteady them and hold them ransom if the government doesn't pay him what he wants to be paid. Then he'll have the buildings destroyed from underneath. April's like, why are you doing this? You can make more money with the mousers than you could using them to terrorize people. And basically Baxter Stockman tells her, well, doing it my way is fun. He's like, I'm not even worried about the money. He's like, I'm just doing it for the fun of it. So of course April's like, no, I'm not. I don't have anything to do with this. She goes to leave. The elevator's locked. So Baxter Stockman decides to make a game out of it. So he shunts her off into the sewers, and he reprograms the mousers, 3 mousers to chase her down. So she's being pursued through the sewers by the mousers, which, ironically enough, she helped create. And she gets saved by the turtles, by 3 of the turtles. Of course, she passes out. When she comes to, Splinter's waiting on her. Splinter explains who they all are, where they all come from, and Baxter Stockman appears shadowed on the television, talking about how he's going to destroy all these buildings if he don't get paid so and so $1 billion. Uh, which is funny, but it's not funny, but it is funny. He makes a reference to knocking down the World Trade Center. So, oddly enough, we all know what happened to that. Uh, he makes an example out of a business that nobody's in to show him that he's not playing around. April agrees to take the turtles to where Baxter is because the turtles have been looking for a mission since they stopped the shredder. They don't know their place in the world right now. Stopping the shredder and killing the shredder was Splinter's master plan for them. I don't guess Splinter thought past that. So they're kind of directionless right now. Like they didn't set out to be heroes and all this. They were just going to avenge what happened to Splinter's master. Now that that's been done, you know, they're kind of directionless. So this is where we start to see them going in the hero section. They get in Baxter's lab through April. They kind of ambush him, but he ends up getting the upper hand, and he ends up getting knocked out, actually. He thought he had the upper hand, and then that didn't work out for him. So they're in there trying to find a way to, Donatello and April are working on the computer, trying to find a way to bypass where Baxter Stockman has basically fried out the computer. And all the other turtles are trying to hold off the mousers from coming in because Baxter Stockman has reprogrammed the computer to come down there where he is and basically destroy the building they're in and just kill everybody. So they're trying to override the computer while the other turtles are out there just, buying as much time as they can. They find explosives to try to seal the place down some. And usually I'm not into this kind of art, but it's the same way that issue 1. The art fits this material very well. I mean, this is not very realistic looking, but it's not terrible art. It's not bad art. This fits the material very well. Like this with this kind of material, I don't know why, but it works with it. This will get a much higher rating on it, for me, for art, just because it fits the atmosphere of the book. It's a little dark, it's a little gritty, it fits with the tone. Uh, the turtles end up setting an explosion off, burying a half of them, but they're resilient. They end up creeping through. Donnie and April managed to override everything. I don't know why mousers are shooting blood out of them when they're just mechanical things. So I'm assuming that's not blood. I mean, if you've ever seen fresh hydraulic fluid, it's got kind of a red look to it. So I'm assuming that's hydraulic fluid because obviously they're robots. Something has to move them. So I'm assuming that's hydraulic fluid. But all the same, it's pretty brutal. But I mean, look at these splash pages. I mean, this is fantastic, man. Like this is really really good. You know, man, that's nice. But they end up overriding the computers there at the end. You know, just as they're all stuck in the little bitty room, and that's pretty much the end of this issue. They override the computers. This was a good issue. It's kind of mature tone, just like the first one, even though I will say I don't think it's as over the top as the first one with the violence, like where Shredder, blows himself up with a thermite grenade and his arms being thrown around at the end. All the woman beating and woman killing that was in the first one, that's not in here. But this one's still brutal with, Baxter Stockman wanting to destroy buildings full of people. And, it's definitely in the World Trade Center, talking about destroying the World Trade Center, and oddly enough, that's exactly what a terrorist ended up doing, 20 years later, 30 years later. So using the Mousers to hunt down April to try to kill her. I mean, there's brutal elements to this one as well. I like this tone for Turtles, but I like my light sided IDW early Turtles. Like, I don't like the IDW Turtles after the Mutant Town stuff. But the stuff, all that stuff before issue 100, 100 and before was good, solid Turtle stuff. Uh, this was kind of a big issue, like last one was, because we get the introduction of April, we get the introduction of Baxter Stockman, we get the introduction of the Mousers. So you've got three of your main constants in the Turtles universe, appearing here. Last issue, of course, was, the Turtles and Shredder, first appearance. This is a very, very good book, and this Turtles line I didn't even start reading on until, like 2-3 years ago maybe. And I've been reading Turtles. Hell, I grew up on the Saturday morning cartoon and had no idea they were like this. That they were this mature when they first come out. So chances are, most people don't know. So if this is your introduction to it, it is a little more mature, but it is a way, way better experience, I think. Art wise, I will give this issue, I give it an 8. I feel like the art works for it. Story wise, this was a very good issue, just like issue 1 was. I give it a 9 because I was very engaged with the story. There are a lot of tension points in here, like when they're trying to defend, April and Donnie from the Mousers. It's got a very, very tense feeling to it as you're reading, their struggle. So I like that it had that feeling to it. So overall, this issue, I give it an 8.5 overall. We will be getting into issue 3 soon. So that is the end of this review. So we will see you in issue 3.